It is through the power of serenity, Vera, and my pretty floral bonnet that I'm able to channel the divine into my magics. Hello everyone, and welcome back down here to the Gamer's Den with me, your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire, talking about the second level spells of the first edition Pathfinder Paladin today. And it's going to be a pretty good one. We've got a pretty tasty selection if I say so myself. Just bear in mind that this is just a general guide. Now these are going to be fairly effective selections overall, but it's not the most overly optimized, broken kind of build. This is just meant to be a guide to help you learn what's mechanically more effective, kind of go into a bit of how it works and how everything comes together, but just always remember, build the character that's the most fun for you. Don't take this as set in stone, something you have to do every time. I mean, that should be obvious to many veterans, but it's worth reiterating, both for newcomers and also every once in a while we tend to forget ourselves. But let's go ahead and dive into things now. Oh, I almost forgot, if you're new here to the channel, go on down there, hit the subscribe button, and become a regular member here at the Gamer's Den. Or if you've already gone on ahead and listed yourself on such a legendary roster of incredible heroes, then go on down to hit the like button and share the video far and wide. Now let's talk about your second level spells, and we're gonna start things off with Righteous Vigor. You touch a target, and each time they hit an opponent, they gain a +1 morale bonus to attack for a max of +4, and 1d8 temporary hit points to up to a max of 20. If they miss, the attack bonus resets to 0, but the temporary hit points remain. Now this is an ideal buff for yourself. I mean, it is a buff, it's good on anyone, but the targets who will most likely benefit from this are going to be allies like rogues or ninja or inquisitors and rangers, characters who are meant to be in the thick of combat but either have lower armor, lighter armor that they're able to wear and thus lower armor class bonuses, or lower attack bonus progressions, or lower amounts of hit points. This will be good for anybody, but these particular kinds of classes will benefit greatly from this in order to shore up either their lower attack bonus or giving them some extra hit points. But then we go on from there to another selection that's really right up your alley. Very good. It's Widen Auras. You target yourself to expand the radius of your auras from 10 feet to 20 feet, allowing you to encompass more of your allies and give them those bonuses that you are just passively putting off there simply by being conscious and in the thick of combat. Definitely great to have, well worth a second level spell slot. But then we go on from there to Weapon of Awe. You touch a weapon to give a +2 sacred bonus on damage rolls. If the weapon scores a crit, the target becomes shaken for 1 round with no saving throw. Now, weapons with a higher critical range will definitely benefit greatly from this, especially with that last portion there, being able to inflict a debuff on an enemy, shaken for, it's only for 1 round, but no saving throw. That's great. That's a great penalty to put on people, and it doesn't seem like there's really any limit to it beyond whether or not you're hitting with critical hits. Now, weapons like falchions and scimitars that can, especially if somebody's building into it to expand that critical threat range, you could be looking at a 25% critical hit rate, meaning 25% of the time their attacks are going to leave a target shaken for 1 round if you put this spell on them. But the really nice part is that +2 sacred bonus on damage rolls. Because it's a sacred bonus, it'll stack with a lot of other sources of damage, so that boosts the overall damage output and is just absolutely great to have. This next spell is an interesting one. It's not going to be especially useful for this build, but it was interesting enough to me that I wanted to throw it in here, and that's Saddle Surge. You give yourself and your mount a +1 competence bonus on ride checks and a +1 morale bonus on attack rolls for every 5 feet you move on your mount, to a max of your caster level. This lasts 1 round per level so long as you remain mounted. So, if you move 10 feet, that's a +2 competence bonus on ride checks for yourself, and a +1 morale bonus on attack, or a +2 morale bonus on attack rolls. So that's actually pretty hefty, and given that this is going on to an animal companion that eventually gains the celestial template, you're gonna have a pretty impressive ally that's getting a significant boost from you, both of you being buffed for the cost of one spell. The only drawback is that you have to remain mounted, and that's where it kind of falls apart for this particular build. We're not looking at staying mounted or doing a whole lot of mounted combat. We want our animal companion, our bonded animal companion, to be a flanking ally to help and assist us, and go into combat in that fashion. So Saddle Surge is going to be really good for mounted combat builds, less so for us, but definitely an example of where some really good spells under certain contexts just aren't that great anymore. So for those of you building a paladin around being a mounted combat expert, this is the spell for you. Less so for us, this is more going to be situationally useful since we're looking to be on foot more often than not. But then we come around to another spell, and that is Litany of Warding. For 1 round, you gain an additional 2 attacks of opportunity and a +2 sacred bonus to armor class against attacks of opportunity. This is great when you're putting yourself in a position to really intercept a lot of different opponents who may be attempting to swarm past you or rush you down, and hoping that because you're bulky, you're heavily armored, and we've got a lower dexterity score, that you're not going to get that many attacks of opportunity, and they'll just be able to rush you with sheer numbers and overwhelm you. This can put to rest some of those ideas, although not for very long, but that's still extra attacks, and extra attacks is extra damage, more enemies put down potentially. Definitely a great thing for you to have access to. So, worth having for a lot of different situations. Then the next spell is Fire of Entanglement. The target of your next Smite Evil attack is wreathed in fire, entangling the target and treating them as tethered to an immovable object if they start their turn next to you. Lasts for 1 round per level, although a successful reflex save reduces this to 1 round. So, it's limited in its effectiveness in that you're going to have to use this on evil targets, because that's the only time Smite Evil works, is if it's against an evil target, or some kind of undead, evil dragons, evil outsiders, etc. But this is a hell of a debuff to throw down on a target, and given that the kinds of targets you're going to really be breaking out Smite Evil against, it's probably well worth it to leave them entangled and stuck next to you, and having a much harder time moving and escaping. So again, another one that's really good for you, although this one may be a little bit more situational than some of the others, given its dependence on Smite Evil. But since Smite Evil is our bread and butter, we can reliably assume that we are going to make some regular use of this spell. But, of course, there are just so many more spells out there that are really effective for you, depending on the situation. Any of the resist energy spells to take some of the damage off of fire attacks, cold, lightning, acid, sonic attacks, any of those things, it's well worth it to have that in your back pocket if you know you're going to be facing a substantial amount of that kind of damage. For example, if you're going to be facing down a red dragon, certainly an evil creature appropriate for a paladin such as yourself to be smiting, and having energy resistance up to take off 10-15 points of damage off of every single fire attack that comes your way is going to be well worth that investment. But what do you think? Go on down to the comments below and let me know your thoughts. Did you like today's video? Did you dislike it? Hit those like or dislike buttons and leave your comments and thoughts down below. Suggest any other spells you might recommend as really worthwhile to have, because you're not limited like a wizard to which spells you've studied and added into your spellbook. You can swap them out on a day-to-day basis for whichever ones seem like they're going to be most useful for you. And for that, you just need to know what you're going to be facing. And Also remember, if you're new here to the channel, go on down there, hit the subscribe button, and become a regular member here at the Gamers Den. But with all that said, I've been your host, Jordan, your Master of Lore and Storyteller Extraordinaire. Thank you all so very much for your time, and you all have yourselves a good night.